And if we look at the way the British do things, you probably notice with the way we approach series, we don't go into these crowded rooms where there are 60 people filling up an entire scene. It's usually just 2 or 3 people in one room. We're used to thinking small.
The show where we turn the ASMR to 11. This is the Gals of Geekdom.
Hello, darlings. I'm Eva Webb, doing another solo podcast for the Gals of Geekdom. Don't worry, Crystal and Aaron will be back next week, but today I'm here with writer, actor, YouTube personality, and the creator of the mysterious Mrs. E, Josh Macphearson. We're here to talk about nerd stuff, Josh.
Yes, we are. I originally came here to talk about Captain Marvel, I think Shazam, but geek stuff in general is also kind of cool as well. There's a lot to dissect this week, I think.
Definitely. There really, really is.
Mm-hmm.
We've got so much going on. All of the good shows just sort of wrapped up. We've got Star Trek Discovery coming down the tubes, which I don't know about you, but I am personally very excited about that one.
Oh, I am so looking forward to that. I mean, the last 2 series I really enjoyed. Despite plot holes, every series has plot holes at the end of the day. I really enjoyed season 2. So I'm really hoping that with the new setting they have, it opens up a tremendous canvas for, that I'm pretty excited about.
It's interesting because it almost looks like they're going with the Voyager format, where they're trying to reset the whole continuity almost.
I mean, I think Alex Kurtzman has been really given a hard job of the fans originally were debating how were they going to fix continuity errors in the show. And I'm like, we're talking about a series that literally, I think in the Voyager series, for example, they had a complement of 27 photon torpedoes and ended up using minus 98 throughout the entire series. So really continuity.
Oh, yeah. There was a YouTube video on that, in different episodes, they killed, 5 times the number of crew that they were supposed to have in the first place?
Oh, God, yeah. Yes, they did. And I think the way they tried to fix that was throwing an extra Federation ship that nobody knew went missing in the original series. I'm like, I would hate to be the commander. The Equinox, that was it. Nobody mentioned the Equinox going missing for 7 years, and all of a sudden,
it just happens to be there.
Yeah, so it just shows you how much of a geek I am that I'm paying attention to this,
It's weird because Voyager has these rare moments where it's just an amazing show, and then it just forgets all of that, and it just goes on these weird episodic things that are just meaningless. Also, whoever wrote the technobabble in Voyager, that really bugged me because you could tell they were just making things up as they went. I know it's technobabble and they're always making it up, but all of the other Star Trek shows, the technobabble's fairly consistent. You can follow it, you can tell what their computers are doing.
Which is kind of sad because to me, Star Trek Voyager had the best Star Trek episode ever. The one with fear, when Janeway literally scares fear itself. What was that called? I reviewed it. The Thor, that was it. And to me, that was the best written Star Trek episode I've ever seen, which is kind of ironic because to me, Star Trek Voyager is the worst series ever as far as Star Trek is concerned.
They had that one episode, I don't remember what it was called, and that's the one where they're all sort of kidnapped and they're given amnesia and they go down to work in this factory.
Oh, God, I remember that one, yeah. They become part of the workforce.
Exactly. I think it was actually called Workforce or something along those lines. And that was one of the greatest Star Trek episodes, I think, in any series. It was just absolutely fantastic.
When Star Trek Voyager literally brought on the writers that could actually write, they did a damn good job. I mean, we had the Medicare for All episode, I think, at one point with the Doctor, and his moral dilemma, and they touched upon him literally risking killing somebody to make sure everybody got the care they needed, and then he runs a diagnostic on himself, and there's nothing wrong with him, and they never touch on that again. never touch on that humanity that he felt at that time. It's kind of like they had an opportunity there, and it was just like totally forgotten about in the next episode. Sadly,
it was really interesting how they played with, your sense of self and identity. I mean, who are you? What does your life mean if somebody can just delete an episode from your memory and you have no say-so in it?
Oh, yeah. The one thing that I think Voyager did right was focusing on humanity.
Sure.
The moral conjurers. I mean, one thing you can say about Voyager is that even though it got a lot of the morality wrong, in many cases, Captain Janeway did have to literally break more rules than Captain Kirk did, just to survive out. They wanted a show that represented the Federation in a space where there was no Federation, and and with the Marquis crew as well. And I'm kind of like, what pirate crew would literally decide that they're going to go by Federation rules within the space of just 5 episodes? They had so much potential with that kind of story, and I think they blew it, sadly. And they knew they had it. But Janeway was the kind of character that would break the rules if necessary, but I think they just kind of blew it. That there was a lot of copping out with Voyager that DS9 didn't do.
Yeah, that's true. I think DS9 also had a Healthcare for All episode where Dr. Bashir beams down to this planet where they're having a pandemic and he has to find a cure for a disease. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and forgive me, like I said, I'm usually good with episode names, but
I never remember the names or the numbers. I'm really bad about that, actually, so don't feel bad.
I mean, especially in today's day and age now, we have a global pandemic right now, and of course, President Trump has had, now has COVID, and he's saying, "Oh, what wonderful care his hospital, the hospital gave him," and then you realize that nobody has that quality of care that the president currently has, and he's saying, "Oh, they did a great job on him." Well, great. Where's the great job with the rest of us?
Exactly. He's a billionaire to begin with, so he's got a completely skewed idea of what reality looks like. And then on top of that, he's the most powerful man in the free world right now. Of course, he's going to have good health care, and he just automatically sort of assumes that the rest of us are going to have this. I think it was his son, Donald Trump Jr., who said something along the lines of, Biden's tax cut is going to affect everybody when it only affects people who make more than $400,000 a year. And that just blew my mind when I heard it, because it shows how out of touch these people are.
Well, I mean, I'm usually not one to judge the way the polls are going, especially after 2016. But it strikes me that the American people aren't buying the BS at this point. That's I mean, this is politics, not geek stuff. But I think Star Trek made a great segue to this.
You can talk about anything you want on this show.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sad reality is that Biden wasn't my choice. Bernie Sanders was my choice, and this is Scottish guys living in America speaking this, I'm having arguments with really rabid Bernie Sanders supporters who are not going to vote Biden no matter what. And I'm kind of like, okay, here's my dilemma. I either accept that we have a fascist in power right now who wants to make sure that he keeps holding on to power, or I worry about the right-winger who's likely to become prime minister, and I would rather fight the right-winger than I would fight the fascist. That's the way I'm approaching it.
I really hate that the parties have set us up for a really weak decision that favors the status quo like this. But we have bad and we have worse, and those are the options this time,
And what do and I think I'll settle for bad. At least I can fight bad.
Right, because fascism wants to rewrite the whole system and hold on to power forever. Well, that's their objective.
Yeah. Well, today's Christopher Columbus Day, and I don't know if you're aware, but the White House website literally did a whole page today praising Christopher Columbus.
Of course they did.
Yeah. And that tells you a lot about how out of about what, not so much how out of touch they are, about how in touch they are with the white straight base that want to keep this status quo. Getting back onto the geek thing, Lovecraft Country must be driving them insane. Oh,
it's a great show, though. This last episode I watched was the season ender.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was I had my wondering as the show was going on if I was watching, if I signed up for this, if I was watching what I was expecting to watch when I first started. But I really kind of liked the way the show was going. The science fiction, the self-reflection, I feel was really, really healthy.
Oh, yeah.
That last episode with the demon dog, just raising out of the street, that's what you expect from a show called Lovecraft Country. It was perfect.
That blew my mind, when I saw that happen, the roadway just exploding. And wow, this day and age, I used to be a police officer myself, but considering, But considering Black Lives Matter movements and everything, I was on the dog side,
I think I tweeted out at the time, oh my God, this is the most gratifying thing I've seen all month.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
And, and the thing I like about Lovecraft Country is that it's not just self-reflection against, about the white community, but about the Black community's attitude towards the LGBT community as well.
And like that thing with the two-spirit person that showed up a few episodes back, that was hard to watch. It was challenging, especially the end.
Yeah, it was very hard to watch, and it made me question whether the show was doing our community justice with that particular scene, and it made me feel uncomfortable. But then when I started watching the following episode, and then the Tulsa burning episode, and it focused on those issues again, it kind of started to make more sense what they were saying. It's kind of like the Kitsune episode in Korea.
Sure.
They made, it's kind of like, throughout the series, we were thinking that Atticus was supposed to be the sympathetic character. And then the Korean episode comes out, and the guy is a monster, and that's just the thing about Lovecraft Country. The Lovecraft Country isn't about the monsters, the kind of monsters that Doctor Who fights or what Lovecraft writes about. It's about us. It's about creatures, the monsters we are,
Oh, absolutely. And that's more terrifying than anything.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying that show. This is what science fiction and horror is meant to be. It's meant to challenge our morality. Back in the day, when we had Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and stuff like that, they were evil people. But at the same time, Freddy Krueger at least, he was an evil person. But at the same time, so are the people that killed Freddy Krueger. They took justice into their own hands, And it was also questioning, Freddy Krueger wasn't challenging our morality, when the teenagers have sex or anything. That wasn't what the message was. It was basically there was the adult community attacking the young for wanting to be free and and whatever. When people were saying, oh, the morality is wrong, that if you lose your virginity, in a horror movie, you are therefore morally corrupt. No, that wasn't what it was saying. It was saying that's what adults were thinking about us at the time. Hellraiser.
So what's your thought on Hellraiser?
I think, the first movie, and I've read the books as well, what I liked about the first movie was basically Pinhead wasn't so much an evil character as he was just basically this demon cop. It was basically when the Cenobites came, it's kind of going, okay, this is what we do. We bring people to hell. We make sure that hell doesn't come to earth because there's a lot of you out there that isn't ready for what we have to offer you.
Oh, sure.
And then later on, it's, hell and earth just kind of blew all that out the window. And the sequels just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And they wanted so much to create a franchise that was on par with the other, with Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Leatherface, and that kind of thing, that they forgot what the morality of Hellraiser was all about, what the story actually was. It's a shame, really. I wish Clive Barker had just kept that to himself. It's one of those lost opportunities.
Or maybe it's ripe for a reboot. I mean, it has been quite a while. And with these reboots, you have the advantage of time. So you know what the audience reaction is to different things, and you know what the people who like it like.
Well, they've learned a lot. I mean, take a look at the Transformers franchise, for example. You know, Michael Bay. I could go on a whole rant about Michael Bay's portrayal, you know, of Transformers and how he, as far as I'm concerned, ruined the franchise. But then again, I'd sound no better than a Discovery hater at that point. So
yeah. Well, you know, it started strong. The first couple of movies I thought were amazing, but I got really tired of them around the third installment, and I stopped watching them.
Yeah, so did I. I watched the first one, and I enjoyed the first one for what it was. I watched the second one, and it was around about the time where the writer's strike was going on, and it was a prime example of how you don't do a story without a writer.
Effects and explosions were fun.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
You know, you need more as a fan, I think.
Yeah, you do. And really, the other Transformers movies I just watched because I had to review them. And that's kind of sad because when I watch a movie, I want to watch a movie, you know. And, you know, but the problem is there was nothing new, you know, as a reviewer, as a writer, there was nothing new to say about those movies. And then the Netflix released its series, Siege. Was it Siege? Yeah. Transformers Siege.
Yes. And oh my God, it's good.
I love that. I love that. They literally, this is how you do dark Transformers right. But Megatron isn't actually the bad guy. He's just the guy with an alternative point of view. You know, he has the wrong way of doing it. You know, but when you look at the core of his character, he wasn't doing it because he was a bad guy. He was doing it because, well, Cybertron needs to be better. Cybertron's society has failed us. And I'm really grateful that IDW Comics encouraged this new dynamic to the Transformers characters. You know, I don't know if you recall, but in the original reboot in IDW, they went through this arc with Megatron where he finally becomes an Autobot, and he's genuine about his redemption, you know, and that was courageous. And they did it well. So I'm hoping that they go down this route with the Netflix series as well, where they literally focus on Megatron's character rather than this maniacal evil character. You know, like how they did with the Hordak and She-Ra. You know, the new She-Ra series, you know, where Hordak wasn't evil. He was just this rejected clone.
Oh, for sure. I just hope they don't get Starscream a redemption arc, because Starscream not being petty and evil would be a disappointment, I think.
I mean, with the Combiner Wars, I was hoping that they'd give him a redemption arc, and, you know, which I think was the primary disappointment for me of the the Combiner War saga, where they gave us the hope that there was something deeper going on with the characters, and it turned out that it was just basically more of the same. But Siege fixed all of that. Fixed all of that. I don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the Combiner War saga for what it was, and I did like Megatron's redemption in that, you know, to a certain degree. I think Siege did it better. I mean, especially now we're adults now. You know, I'm in my I'm nearly 50. I'm actually 47 tomorrow. So, and
happy birthday!
Thank you. And we're dealing with adult issues now. You know, we're Generation 1 fans. I'm a Generation 1 fan. So, to me, Generation 1 has to have these adult themes, because, you know, that me as an adult could appreciate, because I don't think I could watch Generation 1, the original series, without wondering, why the hell did I like this crap? You know?
I did that, actually. I rewatched the whole thing. I did a Transformers, Thundercats, Voltron thing.
Oh, wow.
And, I was just trying to recapture that feeling of watching them, you know, and the theme song for Transformers, I think, still gives me chills, you know. When you see the More Than Meets the Eye pop in, and the logos spin around, and then you get to the show, and I don't know. I think I graduated from the cartoon when I was a kid to the when they stopped making them after the movie for a little bit there. I graduated to the comic, and the lore of it. I got used to the politics and the history of the Transformers world, where Cybertron came from, the ancients, all that fun stuff, these concepts that popped in, and that's sort of the way Transformers cemented in my mind. So going back to it, oh God, I'm old. 30 years later. I'm only a couple of years younger than you. But yeah, going back to it, 30 years later, and watching it, it's like, yeah, I kind of remember this, but I don't get that excitement that I did when I was like,
Yeah.
6 years old and watching this awesome cartoon.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I'm really glad that what they did was that they got the old man, Simon Thurman, who for me is very special because he originally wrote the UK comic continuity before he was taken on with the the American continuity, and they always go back to him because now he's apparently this Illuminati of Transformers lore. He actually invented a lot of what you see now in today's renditions of Transformers.
I remember the Transformers UK comics.
Yeah.
They were so hard to get here in the US.
Yeah.
But they were totally worth it. So what do you think about the difference? Because there is a difference, I think. And people call me crazy when I point this out. But what do you think of the difference between the way comics are written and presented in the UK versus how the American stories are done?
Well, I think for us, in the UK, we have two ways of approaching comics. One is basically, it's the basic approach just to please the kids. But then you also have this heavy storyline going on. You just got to go back to the ages of Eagle, Dan Dare, or Battle Comics, which was my first introduction to G.I. Joe, which was back then called Action Force, in my day. And if you actually look at the comic, look at Battle Action Force or Battle or Eagle, you'll see how much they put into their storylines, how much they put into their backgrounds, into the characters. These aren't just good guys or bad guys. They literally have their origin stories. I mean, for me, Action Force the Action Force British comic was far more interesting than the G.I. Joe adaptation in America, because there was this really strong relationship dynamic between Lady J, Flint, and the Destro. Cobra Commander hardly made an appearance in the UK renditions of G.I. Joe. It was more concentrating on Lady J, Flint, and Destro. And they did an entire arc with this relationship dynamic between that trio that literally caught the imagination. The only interest I got in the American version of G.I. Joe was the Cobra Commander's son dynamic. It got interesting to me when they were planning the assassination of Cobra Commander, and it turned out to be that they were going to use Cobra Commander's son to do it. And that's when the series became interesting for me.
I think my most memorable exposure to English comics was when I was 16. I went to boarding school, and my bunkmate was this kid from Wales.
Yeah.
He had this gigantic box of 2000 AD, Judge Dredd, and Black and White Batman. And I read these things. He let me read them, thank God. And I just poured through every single one of them. Like I discovered Mark Wagner, for example. I read America, which is one of the greatest comics I think ever written in any form, in magazine form. I read it. And it blew me away. And I'm like, why is this the first time I'm seeing this? Because I'd read thousands of comics, at this point. There's just this quality to them that sucks you in. And you see it with, writers like Neil Gaiman. They do the same thing. And I used to call it compression, but I think it's larger than that. I think there's just something about the way the stories are constructed that the Americans don't do. Like you see it when Americans take over like an English property. The stories don't work the same way.
Yeah, I mean, we're not afraid of being bizarre when it comes to our comic writing. I mean, for instance, with the Mrs. E series, I'm writing. I'm still waiting for the live action option from a particular studio. So, which is why I'm doing the animated. With Mrs. E, I just created this reality where a woman owns a tea shop smack bang in the middle of every single reality you could possibly imagine.
Nice.
And it's bizarre. Because you could do almost anything with that. All she's doing is going on these excursions to find tea for a tea shop and finds herself in very dangerous adventures. And that's, we're not afraid of thinking out of the box, being bizarre, being out of the ordinary, like Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere and the Sandman series and stuff like that. Clive Barker's Hellraiser is Clive Barker's British.
Sure.
You just have to look at the differences between what we do and how Americans write. I think American writers are afraid of something new. They're afraid of doing the new thing. Whereas in Britain, we don't get ratings. Well, it's not a lot of money lost, on TV. We just move on to the next thing, But and I think, forgive me for seeing a silver lining in 2020, but COVID is a terrible thing that, it's happening to us right now. But also at the same time, it's pushing filmmakers and writers to think out of the box now, because you can't go out and make a film without the risk of getting COVID. So now it's pushing writers and creators and directors and producers into whole new directions in how they're going to create something new out of something that's terrible. How they're going to continue being positive when something so bad is going. And if we look at the way the British do things, you probably notice with the way we approach series, we don't go into these crowded rooms where there are 60 people filling up an entire scene. It's usually just 2 or 3 people in one room. We're used to thinking small and quiet and, the slow burn. Whereas in America, everything has to happen at once and everybody has to see what's going on. So you have these action sequences like in the Avengers movies where people are running left and right in absolute chaos. So I'm hoping that at least what little good we can get out of this creatively will encourage American writers and producers to be more conservative with their approach to creation, because I think they've been way over liberal. I'm with the who wrote The Watchmen? Who wrote the
Alan
Watchmen?
Moore?
Alan Moore. I'm with Alan Moore at this point. I think that saturation has been the medium's problem lately. As much as I enjoy the MCU, it's one of the things that I will go out of my way to go watch. They need to go for a more Deadpool approach to it now, and the original point we're going to discuss, Shazam, Captain Marvel. The reason Captain Marvel worked so well for me was because it was such a tiny movie.
It was perfect. It was faithful enough to the source material that it was fun, but it was creative enough that I still felt like I got something new from it that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten otherwise. Yeah,
Captain Marvel, or Shazam, as he's called now, he's my favorite DC Universe character. I find him more morally adjust than Superman is. I mean, and Superman's one of my favorites too, more favorite than Batman, I'll be honest. But the thing I like about Shazam is that for a kid, he is remarkably more mature than his Justice League counterparts.
At times, yeah. I think modern DC, at least in the comics, has this tendency to take Shazam very seriously and go dark with the character far too often. I think there's historical precedent for dark Shazam that is respectable and reasonable and okay, but I don't think it works as well as bright, happy, funny Shazam. I mean, this is a character that has roots. He's got a talking tiger for a sidekick in the classic series. He's got he fights the most ridiculously incompetent Nazis who incidentally keep going well after World War II. He's just in the writing, the Otto Bender, C.C. Beck era writing was really subtle. I just think that when you try to go too dark with a character like this, when you try to turn him into a god like they did with DC Metal, I think it's fun to watch, but it totally misses the point of the character.
Exactly, yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I like the dark metal series. I like the death metal series so far, but I am really, really hoping that we do not have to touch on a Shazam dark multiverse story. That is something I don't see. It's, to me, I'm actually glad that right now they're keeping Shazam out of death metal. They brought him into the Batman Who Laughs series, and I thought that was a mistake. I thought what they did to Billy Batson in the Batman Who Laughs series was probably a too cruel a joke too far for my liking.
I was not happy about it.
No, and I understand the Rock of Eternity's role, and in the multiverse theory, and in all of that. But Shazam to me is such an innocent character to an extent that you're right. If you make him dark, you have dark Shazam, you have Black Adam, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And Black Adam works outside of the Captain Marvel universe as this dark character, okay? I'm okay with him, with Black Adam going into the dark multiverse. I'm okay with Black Adam being in Deceased. They utilized Black Adam very well in the Deceased series, But
I like how Black Adam is sort of this sharp contrast.
Yeah.
To Shazam in that way. Black Adam doesn't make sense. I don't think, if you've got a dark Shazam, because Shazam is just so light and fluffy and fun and silly, for lack of a better way to describe it. And Black Adam is very serious. He has very serious motivations. He's kind of an anti-hero in his own right, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if calling him a villain at this point is fair.
He's the Doctor Doom of the DC universe. Doctor Doom, he did the villain back in my day. Spider-Man and his amazing friends and the Fantastic Four. But then they totally reinvented Doctor Doom, not as a villain, but as somebody almost to sympathize. To the point that I think Reed Richards took on the mantle of Doctor Doom. I think in the X-Earth series. And I like that kind of complexity to our villains now, for want of a better word. I'm currently reading the What If series, right? The What If issue that came out now. What if Doctor Doom hadn't lost the Beyonder powers? And it has a very interesting conclusion, which is pretty much like All-Star Superman, where he gives up his entire powers to save the planet. And he becomes mortal again. So it's I won't give too much away from that. But if you can get the What If, I think it just came out today. If you can get that What If, it's a very interesting take. The Secret Wars Doctor Doom. Oh my God!
Nice. I'm gonna have to pick that up.
Secret Wars. That's such a long time ago. Jeez.
Oh, I know. It was one of the first comics I ever read.
Yeah.
It was 1984, 85. I was really little when that one came out. Spider-Man's black costume was like a revelation. It was so exciting. I remember the energy. I got really excited about it. But I was a Spider-Man fanatic at that point.
Yeah. Me too. It was, ironically, it was the 1960s series that got me into Spider-Man, and that is way before my time. The original Captain America and Iron Man animations, when they came out in VHS in our local video store. I would get them alongside Kid with the White Lion and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So, my dad sat me down with Spider-Man reprints sometime around 1983. Just a big, thick book of reprints. And I decided then and there that I was going to be the greatest comic book writer and artist that there had ever been. Big life decisions.
Oh, God,
I was really out of diapers at the time.
I mean, I was the same, I wanted to be a comic book writer or a cartoon writer, and now here I am. I'm now a screenwriter. It took 47 years for me to be discovered.
Congratulations.
But I'm there, So thank you.
That's amazing.
It took me 47 years, but I'm there now, But
what else have you worked on?
Well, I've basically done small things, small independent fan films. I did Star Trek fan films when I was in my 20s, and
nice.
I played Doctor Who at least in 3 fan movies. I've been the Doctor 3 times, so if we're now going to go by the timeless child plot line, I'm now an official Doctor. So, but yeah, actually, my first attempt at comic book writing was a comic called Ariel, High School Devil Girl, and it's an example of how I tend to think out of the box when it comes to writing. Ariel wasn't this bad person because she was a demon, and I didn't paint demons as as bad people or whatever. She was just basically a young girl who misbehaved in hell so much that her father decided to send her to high school. And
I love it.
And back in, this was in 1991, before LGBT and race issues even became a thing in independent media. And Ariel grew up to be the girlfriend of her former high school rival. Nobody did LGBT things, on that scale back in the past. So I was actually pretty proud that I was one of the first comic book writers at the time to actually cross that threshold. I didn't say hint at the possibility she was gay or anything like that. It was just basically, yeah, she's gay. What of it? Move on.
Beautiful.
Yeah, one of the things that bugs me, and this is you'll find what I'm doing with the series, is that how I think that LGBT issues in particular, as well as disabled issues, as you've probably seen in my Twitter account, I post a lot on disabilities and misrepresented in media. When it came to LGBT issues in shows before Star Trek Discovery did it right, which is basically the hot chick was having a lesbian relationship with the hot chick in the TV show, and I'm like thinking to myself, so they just basically turned it into an issue of voyeurism, whereas I'm just approaching it as it's just the thing that happens. Life as heterosexual people, life as gay people, life as transgendered people, life as people with disabilities. These are normal things. These are not abnormal things. These are not out of the ordinary things. What's abnormal to me is how we have sensationalized it, how we have turned it into something to talk down on, or to just basically, oh, look at us, we're now representing a minority that's never been represented before. We're so proud of ourselves, and it's all wrong. They're not doing it right. And that really annoys me. I suffer from paraplegia after I was shot in the war, so I'm still recovering. I can walk now, but it's still frustrating. And what annoyed me about the disabled characters in TV shows and in comic shows, in comic books, was that they were the nerd. They were the person that was kept out of the action. They were just important enough to say, we have a disabled person in our show. And that was all. And that really frustrated. If you look at the poster I sent you, the main character is in a wheelchair, and she's smack bang in the middle of the action. She's the one pointing it out in the poster going, let's go to adventure. We need better representation in the LGBT community. We need better representations in all minorities, because we're doing it wrong, I think. They have good intent. I think they have good intentions, but I don't think they have enough knowledge of what they're dealing with. I hope I'm not rambling. That was my rant for.
No, I agree with you 100%. My hot take is that all representation is good representation. I just want better representation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With trans characters especially, it's really hard to find good trans characters in literature and media. There have been a couple of them. One show that did it absolutely perfectly, and I was floored, was Dispatches from Elsewhere. Have you seen that show?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Fantastic show. It was fun, it was whimsical, it was cosmic nonchalance. Has permanently entered my vocabulary. It's something I say now.
Yes.
And having the not just having a trans character that was a good trans character, but making her the romantic lead, that blew my mind, because I have never seen that on television before.
One of our characters, one of our main characters, he shows up in episode 3, and he's a trans character, female to male character. And we don't make a big thing of it. He just is trans. And I was having a discussion with one of my producers. So when do we reveal that he's trans? I said, we don't. We don't do an origin story. There's, that's more, if we start doing origin stories as to where he came from and when he was a she, that kind of thing, isn't that to me that to me is equivalent to dead naming? So I don't want to do an origin story as to when she became a he. I don't think that's important. I think the important thing is his character, who he is as a hero. And and to me, it's like I said, a lot of films these days that are focused on, they seem to focus a lot on this diamorphic approach to the transgender. I hate to use the word condition. That's a terrible word, but
I use the word experience.
Yeah, that's how they tend to present it. Is how they stare at themselves in the mirror, as a man before they transform into a woman and that kind of thing. And it's kind of like, that is, like I said, it makes it feel to me and a lot of my trans friends like it's not something that they're representing. It's something that, like I said before, they're just turning into voyeurism, and it's really, really, I understand that these are straight people that think that they know what it means to be transsexual, but I'm not transsexual. I'm not going to pretend I understand, what it means to change my gender. I don't know that. But at the same time, I'm not going to write a character without first discussing it with the community I'm dealing with. I'm so happy that the voice actor I have for the role is a female to male black transgender. And he has been tremendously helpful in helping me create the character, making the character more human, rather than somebody I'm just thinking I know what I'm writing about.
I think it's tricky because I don't want to tell you as a trans person that you shouldn't create trans characters.
No.
Simply because you're not a trans person. But I do think that there's a lot that profoundly impacts any character you would create. That you just can't know about unless somebody tells you about it,
Exactly, yeah. It's a balance. So for me, input is important. Like I said, I don't want to make the mistake of just writing a trans character for the sake of him being a trans character. I can't do that. I think that would be more disrespectful to the trans community than respectful. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense, actually. I think my biggest complaint with trans characters in general, and this is one that other trans people completely disagree with me on, so just take this with a grain of salt, but I like when you have cisgendered characters, it's not unusual to see a character that's completely messed up, that has a redemption arc where that person has to deal with their problems and overcome any serious issue. I think my honest complaint with trans characters, though, by contrast, is that by the time you meet them in their stories, normally they really have their shit together. They've accomplished everything they need to accomplish. Or they just don't have problems. I think. In general, I would like to see trans characters that are a little more screwed up, that have a little more to work on, that are a little further away from their goals, so that you could do the character development and really have them get there. Give them things to overcome, show that they're really people, and I feel like that's the sense that I don't get a good 50% of the time with trans characters.
I mean, we open up the main character. One of the two main characters, Aiko. A lot of the shows I've seen basically build up to the gay relationship in, like She-Ra. And I thought that was very well done in She-Ra. In my show, I've literally thrown the main character into the deep end and said, she's already married. She's in a gay marriage already. And she's being honest. She has issues with that because people judge her for that marriage. I don't shy away from them. I like how Steven Universe approached it. I like how She-Ra approached it. I like how Storytime approached it. But I do think that if we're going to have our children understand that this is a normal part of life, homosexuality, bisexuality is a normal part of life, then we have to also be honest about the issues that the communities face, the judgments they face, and how they or if they overcome. Sometimes we can't overcome that. I'm polyamorous, I'm pansexual, and there are some issues I will never be able to get over because society is far too judgmental. So we have to be honest and say, yes, there are gay relationships out there, but there are people who are also bigoted out there, and we can't shy away from it. Sesame Street didn't shy away from Black Lives Matter. So why can't we have our shows be brutally honest about how difficult it is for us to be who we are? I think science fiction and fantasy and comics have such a tremendous medium to approach this issue with. I mean, X-Men didn't shy away from race relations back in the day where it was the wrong thing to write about, And I think we need more and more courageous writers out there that are quite prepared to write about the wrong thing every now and again for our children.
I agree. We need more Chris Claremonts, more Stan Lees.
More Stan Lees. Go back to the 1800s. H.G. Wells. He was a thinker out of his time. He literally frowned upon the elite class, as he used to call them back in the day.
I read a whole bunch of H.G. Wells books when I was a teenager, and just recently I reread The Time Machine. And when I was a kid, I think I missed all the politics in that book. I mean, they're pretty glaring now, though. How he felt about the wealthy overclass and how much of a threat they were in general to people who just don't think to question them. I think that's really what the whole book was about.
Oh yeah, War of the Worlds, everybody says, was about the Boer War. If you actually look at a lot of his interviews, he actually mentions the American genocide of the Native American people and the Aboriginals in Australia. He was literally pointing out the Martians were us. The Martians are the white guy. And this was in a time where colonialism was considered just a natural part of life.
I took your recommendation, great video on your YouTube channel about this History Channel documentary.
The Great Martian War.
I think it was called The Great Martian War. Yeah. Man, I watched that thing, and it was so novel. I thoroughly enjoyed it. How it really felt like a World War I documentary. Where they had footage that looked like it was from different times and different places, and they got it down to the dialect that people are speaking during those periods where they're supposed to be from. It just felt so authentic and so interesting.
Yeah, you should also, if you ever get the chance to, watch War of the Worlds, The True Story. That was done before The Great Martian War. In fact, it was actually the original concept that was promoted to History Channel before History Channel went and did their own thing. It's done in the same way. I wouldn't say quite as visually effective, but it was done in the same way. But it's done based on the original novels version. It has the last survivors' account of the original invasion, and the way Timothy, what happened was with Timothy Hines, he created the first faithful adaptation of the War of the Worlds, and it was terrible. Even he admits it was a complete disaster. So what he did was he finally got the rights back to his, to his old footage, and he reinvented it into War of the Worlds: The True Story, which was an award-winning success. It was actually much better than his original. And the way he, the interviews with the last survivor who apparently died in the 60s, but the way they did the filming and the filming of the interview with the guy, it felt like they were having an authentic interview with the survivor from the invasion of the 1890s. The way he did the sound, and the choppiness of 60s footage, that kind of thing. So if you get the opportunity, I would watch that as well. I think it's on Amazon and Vimeo Prime.
I can't wait. That sounds like a lot of fun. One thing that came to mind after seeing several adaptations of War in the Worlds, it really does feel like every time they do it, there's a different message that comes out. You would think that, if you're adapting something that, it would basically be the same message. There would be the same takeaway every time. But with War of the Worlds, it's always something different.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is there so much to pull out of it?
Well, I think what it is they're trying to do with War of the Worlds, it's one of those things that you could almost adapt to almost any situation now. Go back to Orson Welles, who did the very first radio adaptation of it, and it's pretty clear what his message was. it was about the power of modern day media. The rise of Adolf Hitler through modern day, from modern day media. So I think War of the Worlds, has this potential to give a new message through the same old story. It's really one of those rare things you can do where you can take a look and say, okay, we know what the original message was, so can it be played in a new way that it presents a message that is relevant to our time? And it can. You can't do that with the Time Machine. Time Machine's message is very, it's very black and white. But with War of the Worlds, you could do almost anything with it message-wise. I don't think that's a bad thing, to be honest with you. I think if you can actually bring in something new with an old story, that's great. That's great. I'm all for adaptation. Usually, I think that adaptation is far more entertaining than the original source. Like I said in my review of the BBC series, it was a good adaptation. It had its flaws, but I understand why they adapted it the way they did. It's my favorite novel of all time. But if I gave it to somebody today to want to read, they would have to be somebody who likes their literature to read the book. I think that War of the Worlds is such a timeless thing. You could do almost anything with it. Yeah, that's how I feel with it. You could almost throw any message in there. Advanced civilization, can have different motivations for why they're doing what they do, why they're invading us. There's another adaptation now, I don't know if you're aware of, released by Canal or Fox TV. Are you familiar with that?
To be perfectly honest with you and the audience out there, my experience with War of the World has been the movies, the television show from the 1980s, the musical, and the History Channel documentary. I started reading the original novel maybe 20 years ago, but I never finished it.
That's my point. I think the problem is H.G. Wells talks and talks and talks a lot. His book may not be as thick as Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, but what he lacks in detail, he makes up for in embellishment.
I remember that he had a lot of relationship building in the book. And the book sort of switches perspective a few times, so the characters all feel real. It feels like a world with history, a world with relationships in it. And I think for me, as a media consumer and a reader and whatever, I like stories where there's that kind of thing in a world, where there's just a backstory, a background, something to figure out and learn.
I mean, the when we're going into adaptations, where people do modern day adaptations of the War of the Worlds, back in the day, you didn't have this mass communication thing where if there was a Martian invasion in the south of England, nobody would know about it in London for a few days. That was how it worked. And even if they did, no one would take it seriously because it was so far removed from them. These days, you can't do a War of the Worlds adaptation where mass communication isn't a thing. So you have to do it in such a way that it is relevant to today's issues.
Couldn't you do that with the personal relationships? I feel like sometimes when they do War of the Worlds, like the Steven Spielberg movie, for example, I feel like they glossed over a lot of that. For me, that was, when I see War of the Worlds, that's what I like to see. I like to see the people going crazy. Disaster's kind of cool. But watching the people is really the most interesting thing about that story. It's not even the aliens, unless I'm crazy.
That was it. No, that's not crazy at all. In fact, that's actually how War of the Worlds worked. We only get to see the Martians twice in the novel. The actual Martians themselves twice in the novel. And everything that Wells says about their motivations is conjecture. He doesn't say it as a matter of fact. He says, their planet is cold, it's logical to assume they're coming from a dying world. But that's all we know about. Because it wasn't a story about the Martians. It was a story about, again, us. How the artilleryman suddenly became this, this supremacist. The weak should be cast aside and only the strong can survive. And then you got the parson who himself approaches it in such a different way, where he, his entire reality has fallen apart. His faith is now in question because God is supposed to save the world, but God isn't there. And and the narrator just slaps him and says, "Where was God in the middle of an earthquake?" That kind of thing. Do you think God has abandoned you because he wasn't abandoned? People in the middle of an earthquake. So the way Wells approached how different people approached the invasion and how the narrator's fall from grace throughout the entire novel is a very, it's a very, very fascinating view on humanity. Again, nobody wrote about disasters in a fictional sense until H.G. Wells did. Nobody.
Really?
Yeah, nobody did a novel on alien invasions. Nobody did a disaster novel. Nobody did anything quite like what H.G. Wells did with War of the Worlds. If it wasn't for War of the Worlds, we wouldn't have the likes of Mars Attacks, and I love Mars Attacks. Not the movie, but I love the whole concept of it. And it's Wells was There were science fiction writers beforehand talking about a time where everybody thought that everything scientific was discovered, and Wells wrote a novel where he said, "No, you're wrong. There's still a lot more we don't know about," and that's why I like the guy. Getting back to our original point about writers, I really want to see more out of the box thinking.
So what makes a good adaptation of War of the Worlds versus a bad one? I'm sure you've seen some bad ones.
I think faithful renditions are bad adaptations. If something is too faithful, it's boring. Okay, try and imagine doing Lord of the Rings faithfully.
With all the long descriptions and the 30 pages on a toenail. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, a good adaptation is one that that says, okay, here is the core concept of War of the Worlds, and this is how we're going to do it. The 1953 version, that movie, is to me one of the best adaptations of the War of the Worlds. Sure, it didn't have tripods. I'm sorry, but it was still one of the best adaptations out. I love the tripods in the BBC version. It was a bad adaptation. It had good elements to it, and it could have done, they could have done better with it. But it had tripods. So that was a winning factor for me. The problem I had with Steven Spielberg's adaptation was that it was too 9/11 for me. 4 years after 9/11, to me as a British guy, we lived through terrorism practically. I lived through terrorism all my life. I had my grandparents telling me don't get blown up by an IRA bomb, that kind of thing. And you got to understand, our way of approaching terrorism was, it's a thing that happened. We will mourn the dead. We move on. That's our British way of thinking. So when War of the Worlds came to our country, the 9/11 thing for us, it wasn't so much something that we moved on from. It was something that we kind of go, it happened. We know it happened. It's a terrible thing. And we don't need this constant reminder that it was a terrible thing. We understand it was terrible.
I think in America, we just, in general, even now, I feel like we don't have a ton of firsthand experience when it comes to terrorism. I've lived overseas. I lived in the Middle East. I spent time in Egypt and Jerusalem and a little bit in Ireland. So it's a completely different world, the way they see it, where they have, day-to-day experience with this kind of thing.
And you got to understand, for us, when the Americans are telling us we need to fight the enemy, blah, 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 this war against terrorism, a lot of us lost family. I've lost family members in IRA bombings, and some of us still remember that Sinn Féin, at the time, who spoke for the IRA, was going over to America for funding. So a lot of us are still pretty sore that a lot of the bombs, a lot of the shootings that got our family members killed came from American fundraisers. And then when America came to us and said, we got to fight terrorism, we're like, where the heck were you for the past 40 years? Don't get me wrong, I think Ireland should be a united Ireland. I truly do. I'm on the Irish side. When it comes to unification, I'm on Sinn Féin's side. But I still have to remember that I lost family members as a result of this, and I lost a lot of family members as a result of American funding. So when we had people saying, when we had the underground bombings in 2003, we had Americans saying, now you guys know what it's like to be attacked by terrorists. And we're like, F you. Wow, thanks. They wondered why we were so angry that they were telling us what it was like to be attacked by terrorists. We've known for for years. We've known for decades. And it really horrified a lot of us more left-wing British and Scottish people about how out of touch America was with what was really going on in our country. How much they didn't really appreciate it.
Right. And when we do experience terrorism in America, I still don't think we have the tool set to cope with it. We approach it like communism or something abstract.
Yeah. I mean, when we had the failed bombings, in the underground, one of the terrorists literally ran right past me. So I was that close to being blown up myself. And, and the buses came to a stop. The underground trains came to a stop because they had to. And we just went about our lives normally during that day. It's not something we panicked about. We just went about our business. Traffic went on as normal. The shops stayed open. I went to HMV, got my CD. This was in London. And that's how we handled it. If we panic, if we start sensationalizing it, two things happen. First of all, the authorities can't do their job because there's too much panic going on. And second of all, the terrorists win. If life doesn't continue as normal, they win. And this is why white supremacists and the more radical Islamic terrorist cells poke America so much, because America is so easy to poke. You can make, what was the joke in Bowling for Columbine about a group of scared people moved from Europe to America and found that there are people living here that they were even more scared of. And it's been a running joke in Europe ever since that America is almost scared of everything. I hope I'm not insulting anybody there, but that's the impression.
I don't think you are. I think you're doing people a disservice when you're not honest about these kinds of things. And
yeah.
I think part of the problem in America that you just don't see in Europe and other places is this strain of crazy anti-intellectualism. People don't want to sit and think through a problem in America. They want their opinions, they want their politics pre-digested and handed to them, rather than really honestly consuming media and being critical of things. Critical thinking has always been a problem in America. Yeah. I feel happy though that I think that's starting to change, but it's a very slow change.
Yeah, I mean, the internet is a great tool. I mean, there's a lot of dark things that go around the internet information-wise, but the young know where they're going to look at this point. They know that MSNBC has a political bent. They know that Fox News has a political bent. They know who runs mainstream media these days. They understand that. People like you and me will probably sit down and watch TYT or the Humanist Report or whatever, because we know that even when it comes to the Democrats, they will turn around and say the Democrats are really messing things up too. They will say that. But you won't see that on MSNBC. You won't see that on Fox News. They are literally entrenched so much in their Democratic Republican mindset that they won't criticize the other side. It just doesn't work. But at least when I sit down and watch TYT, when Obama was running, TYT didn't shy away from criticizing Obama when he was wrong. You didn't see that on MSNBC. I'm sorry, I'm going to say, part of the mess we're in is largely because of what the Democrats refused to do. The whole reason a man like Trump is in power right now is largely because of what Democrats refused to deal with, because they were so comfortable with the status quo.
Right, and the status quo has always sucked.
Yeah.
It's always come up short when it comes to people's rights and people's dignity and people's jobs, the economy, all of it. I don't understand why people are so complacent with the way things are. The way things are suck in general. It's good for a very small number of people, but the rest of us have to live with it.
Yeah, but what was it Biden said to responses? Nothing will effectively change. Well, great. That's I'm sorry, but
he doesn't want to roll forward. He wants to go back to where things made sense, and that's terrifying. But it's like we were talking about earlier. Our choice is bad or horrible. Which do you want?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm old. Like I said, I'm turning into an old man. And it's not my future I'm fighting for anymore. And I wish people like Biden, Kamala Harris, and Pelosi would understand that they're not going to inherit the world that they're setting up. The reason I like Bernie Sanders so much is that this is a 78-year-old man, 76, 78, who's literally saying, I'm not going to inherit the next world. I'm fighting for the next generation. But you don't get any other politician doing that at his age. When my great-great-grandfather fought in the First World War, he knew I wasn't going to agree with him and everything. But you know why he said he fought? He said so that I didn't have to agree with him and everything. He did it because he knew he wasn't the generation that was going to inherit the 1970s, the 1980s. He knew it was going to be people like me. I wish I had more people like my grandfather,
Yeah, I completely understand. That's a really healthy way to look at things.
Yeah. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there.
No, this has been amazing. Actually, I've really enjoyed this conversation. But we are an hour and a half in, and I'm going to close.
We could go on forever, couldn't we?
We could. I keep saying this has been the best show we've ever done every time we do it. But I think at least so far, this has been an absolutely fantastic show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I wish the other girls could have showed up. They, how it is. They've got busy schedules, time zones.
I'm always willing for another run with you if you want to do that. That's something I'm always willing to do.
That would be fantastic. I'd love to have you back with Aaron and Crystal. I'm sure they'd have a ton of questions and perspectives for you. Do you have anything? So we've already talked about your projects, but we probably want to promote that again. Tell me about what you're up to and what you like to promote.
Well, briefly, yeah, I'm currently working on an animated version of a live-action show I'm waiting for the option on right now, called The Mysterious Mrs. Z. I think I gave you the concept. It's about a woman who owns a tea shop in the middle of reality. The live-action version is kind of darker than what I'm dealing with the TV with the animated TV show, but it's my first foray into real animation. I don't know where it's being distributed yet. That's down to the distributors. We are looking at Netflix. My sponsor did tout Cartoon Network at some point, but that's my project at the moment. It's going to be I'm just looking at 4 seasons. It's going to be a complete story. I'm not very good at writing ongoing seasons, but yeah, that's basically
harder than it looks.
It is, yeah. I mean, they gave me a challenge. My original concept for the live action show was 13 episodes. They wanted me to compress it down to 8. So that was a challenge in itself. But I pulled it off, So, but this season is going with 10 episodes per season, and it's going to be 4 seasons. So you're looking at least 40 24-minute episodes as well. And I'm very excited. The She-Ra community is very excited about it. On the groups I've been in, I've mentioned it, and they're literally all over this right now. They keep telling me to make it more gay, which I think is kind of funny.
I think the gayer something is, the happier a lot of people, myself included, are going to be.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's not often that you actually start something with a fan base already establishing itself before you've actually made it. So that made me pretty happy, As soon as they read the concept and the issues I was dealing with, they all wanted in. I've got to go, after the 15th, I've got to go for at least 125 auditions. So a voice acting audition. So that's going to be a challenge, And I wish I could cast them all, but I don't have that. I don't have that much money, and I don't have that much, that many casts, that many characters, and for a single show. So yeah. I intend to be going back to reviewing on my channel as well. I've taken a hiatus for a while. I think largely because of burnout. With YouTube, you usually find that you just need to take a break. But I'm thinking of going back into it again. Continue with my animated avatar. I've quite enjoyed doing it with that cartoon character now. So that's all I can really tell you.
Really exciting.
Thank you.
That's exciting stuff. I can't wait to see some of this in action.
Well, I'm working on the pilots in November, so I will make sure that you get a sneak peek at the pilot.
Oh, I would love that, very seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed today, and I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Oh my God, no, you were perfect. Seriously, if you ever have the inclination, you are totally welcome back here. This was an amazing show, and I think everybody's really going to enjoy it.
Thank you. I would really like to come back. I really enjoy the conversations with you. Thank you so much.
And that's our show. Gals of Geekdom is a podcast for high-quality nerds everywhere, produced by the lovely and talented Eva Webb. If you're somewhere you can leave comments, let us know by writing a short paragraph about your pets. Join us next week as we get back to basics with Erin, Crystal, and me. See you then.